Okay, so let's get straight into this video. So last week I made a video which was all about the income that I was making from selling just 6 notebooks through Amazon KDP and some of the pros and cons when it comes to selling notebooks. So in today's video, what I wanted to do was take a look at a super easy niche research method that I use to find those notebook niches. And what's great about this method is that it actually works extremely well, and you'll be spending more time on Amazon using your brain instead of relying on tools. And this isn't something that's specific to notebooks either. You can find pretty much all of your niches this way and do all your niche research this way as well. And as a bonus toward the end of the video, what I'm going to do is show you an easy way to determine which seasonal niches are worth your time. So definitely stick around toward the end of the video to watch that as well. Okay, so to make this video as clear as possible, what I'm going to do is kind of just do it as a almost live demonstration of how I'd go about finding these niches. So this is pretty much exactly what I did to find those notebook niches that I saw within. And by the way, if you haven't watched that video already, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check that one out as well. Okay, so let's get straight into the first step here, which is to go over to Amazon.com. So for me, I do pretty much all of my research on Amazon.com because that's the main marketplace. That's where you're going to get most of your sales, followed by the UK marketplace and then the Canadian marketplace. But for now, we're just going to be looking at the US marketplace. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do is come over to Amazon.com, go straight to the search bar and just give myself any type of starting point that I can that is related to the niche that I'm publishing within. So since we're doing notebooks, the obvious starting point here is going to be composition notebooks. So what we can do here is just type that into Amazon, click on the search button here, and then what we want to do is just to go through as much as Amazon as we can. Just go let it take you as many different directions as you can, and just write down every single niche that you find. Now, if you aren't sure what the niche is exactly, then just take a guess at what it is, because later on in this video, the next step, we're going to be confirming that the niche has got buyer traffic going to it. Okay, so what I like to do is just to open up a notepad and just go through Amazon, write down as many different niches as possible. So what I'm going to do here, just to speed things up a little bit, is just to memorize a few of these and then write them down, just so you're not watching me go back and forth between Amazon and my notepad. Okay, so the first thing that you can do is just check the first page of results and then just write down whatever niches you can find. So for example, we have this one here, which is a black marble type niche. Then we have this kind of anatomy niche here. We have like a floral botanical type niche here. So I'm going to be writing all of those down into my notepad. Okay, so this is what I do here. Just open up the notepad, write down what the general sort of niche is. So botanical, black marble, human anatomy, and then just keep going. So the next thing that we can do, and this is what I do for every single niche that I'm researching, is just to go into someone else's book like this and then come down to either the frequently bought together section or the products related to this item section, and then just start your research again from there. Okay, it's this simple. Like, you don't need any tools or anything to help you find these niches, and the more time that you spend on Amazon doing this yourself, the more that you're going to learn about the niche and the exact competition that you have within it. Okay, so I always recommend that people spend as much time as you can on Amazon. So if you do need to use tools to give you like a starting point, I would always start on Amazon, maybe use some tools in between, and then finish everything on Amazon. But for me, it is a case of literally everything on Amazon. Okay, so we're just going to carry on writing down a few of these niches. So for example, we have a aesthetic cat type niche here. We have I don't know what you would call this, vintage cottage core, I think that, yeah, cottage core type style here. So again, I'll be writing all that down. Cottage core, all these type of cottage core things going on here, and then just keep going through them. We have a kind of rabbit niche, boho. So boho niche is something that I'm interested in, so I'm going to write that down into my notes as well. Okay, so once you've written as many of them down as you can, what you can do is either go into those other listings and just keep going through that exact same process, or you can start with a new starting point. So for example, we found a cat aesthetic type notebook. So what we can do is use that as our new starting point. Okay, so let's just go ahead and search for cat composition notebook, and then just do the same thing that we did originally. Just go through all of these niches, write down as many as we can, let Amazon take us in different directions, just keep writing those niches down. Okay, so as I'm going through here, what I can see is that we have another niche here, which is the kawaii composition niche. For example, we have black cat, we could go for that as well. And again, we just keep going through all of these. And if we want to just keep digging deeper, we can go into, again, go into one of the listings, scroll down to the customers who bought this or the customers who viewed this carousels, and just go through these as well. So we've got like a cute frog type of notebook niche here. Let's take a look at that one there and then see where this one leads us, for example. Okay, then we can go through all of these sections here and see what other niches we can pick up through this. Okay, so you see what we're doing here. We're just letting Amazon take us in a ton of different directions. So we have another one here. This is the whole axolotl. Is it axolotl? Is that how it's pronounced? We could write that one down as well and then start pursuing that later. Okay, so don't worry at the moment if you're not sure if there's buyer traffic going to these niches, because we're going to be confirming these very shortly. And also after that, what we're going to be doing is taking the steps that we need to take in order to actually get our books found. Okay, so because there's no point in us entering into really competitive niches and then expecting to get found. Okay, so we're going to determine what we need to do to get our books found. Okay, so it's a very important section of this video, but let's keep going with this for now. Okay, so let's just write these down into our notepads. We had the kawaii thing, we had the axolotl things as well, and we don't need to know the exact keywords for the niche because we're going to be determining that later on in the video as well. But just get some ideas down, as many as you can, spend as much time as you can looking through these. Okay, so let's press on with our niche research. So at this point, you should have a ton of different niches written down into your notepad or wherever you're saving them. And again, you can do this for any type of niche. We're just talking about notebooks and using that as an example here. But what I like to do now, and this is going to save you some headaches later on when it comes to creating the title for your book, or what keywords should I be targeting and things like that. What I like to do now is to determine what my main search term is going to be for each of those niches. Okay. So what I'll do is go through all of these. I won't in this video, but what I would do is go through all of them and write down what I think the main search terms could be for those books. Now, you're never going to find any tool or anything like that that's going to tell you exactly what the best search terms are. No tool exists. Trust me, it doesn't exist. But what we can do is make educated guesses by using Amazon itself. So let's use the botanical one that we found as an example here. So the first thing that you want to do is just go with what is a logical search term. So if you're thinking about creating, if you're thinking about buying a botanical composition notebook, what would you type into Amazon? You would just type in botanical composition notebook, right? So one of the first things that I like to look out for here, and again, it is an indication that there's traffic going to this niche. We won't get too caught up on that at the moment, but what I like to look for is that Amazon brings back variations of those search terms. Okay, so as I start typing botanical composition notebook, we get different variations come up. Okay, so that's a good sign already. But what we're going to do is actually search for botanical composition notebook. And also, since this is a pretty logical search term and it's probably something people are actively searching for, it had the different variations turn up on the searches when we started typing it in. I'm going to put this down as one of my potential main keywords, which again would be one of the potential titles that I would use for this book. Okay, so we're going to write down as many as we can. So what we can do from here to get some other ideas as to the main keyword that we're going to be targeting for our book is just to see what other words people are using in their listings as well. So as we can see, people are using the word vintage and flower quite a lot as well, and aesthetic as well. So what we can do is start again with what's logical, but then include those search terms into it. So if we're looking at something vintage, we can start typing something like vintage botanical composition notebook, and we could potentially be using that for the title of our book. Okay, so let's add that to our potential list. Okay, so the other one was aesthetic composition. If I could spell, they would be coming up with variations. Again, you have variations here on aesthetic composition notebook as well. So we can keep writing these down, just getting an idea of the different types of search terms people are searching for with any type of book that's related to ours. So aesthetic composition notebook was another one that we could potentially use as well. And without sort of going, back and forth here too much, I'm just going to go ahead and put down flower composition notebook as well, because I'm pretty sure people are going to be searching for that. Okay, so let's push on again here with our research. So at this point, you should have already got a ton of those sort of broad niches listed down. So from there, under all of those broad niches, you should have your potential main keywords that you're going to be targeting. Obviously, I'm not going to do every single niche that I found here, but you're going to want to do that. Spend a whole day doing this if you need to. It's going to be totally worth it in the end. So now at this point in my niche research, I like to find what is the absolute most optimal main keyword to use for my book. Okay, so like I said before, my main keyword is just going to be the title for my book, because I believe the title holds the most strength in terms of getting ranked. Okay, that's from what I found anyway. Pretty much every single book of my last 15 I've uploaded, there's been much more emphasis on getting ranked for the title keyword first before anything else. Okay, so what we want to do at this point is to determine which is going to be the best title / main keyword to go for. Okay, so this is when it comes down to making sure there is buyer traffic going to your niche. So what we're going to do here is come over again to Amazon and start searching for the individual terms that we've got listed. Okay, so I've only got 4 here that I'm going to use, but you might have 10, you might have 2. It doesn't matter, you still need to do the research for it. Okay, so let's go ahead and just look for, let's go with the botanical composition notebook and just start searching for that on Amazon now. Okay, so the only thing that we're going to care about here is the BSRs of the search results on the first page. Okay, so everything I do, I plan on ending up on the first page for whatever search term, whatever keyword. Everything I do, I plan on being on that first page. So pretty much all of my research takes place on the first page at this point. Okay, so what we want to do here is establish how much buyer traffic is going to the botanical composition notebook for this example, how much traffic is going to this search term. And the best way that we can do that is by taking a look at the BSRs and seeing how consistently low they are across that first page. Okay, so you're going to want to download a extension that shows you the BSR like on the page here, instead of having to actually go into each listing. The one that I'm using is called DS Amazon Quick View. It's pretty straightforward. Go Google it and yeah, whatever, it's pretty easy. And what that's going to do is just show the BSRs on the front page here, so you can really quickly determine whether there's traffic going to this niche or not. Okay, so what I like to do is first and foremost pretty much ignore the search results here. Okay, I'll get back to that a little bit later on. People obsess over the search results. For me, I've never cared about them, and I probably never will, because if I had, I would have missed out on some of the biggest selling books that I've ever published. Okay, so I don't have a particular set criteria when it comes to this part of the research phase, but what I like to look for when it comes to the notebooks is books that have consistently under 200,000 on the first page as their BSRs. Okay, so if we were scrolling through this one, we could see this one is 200,000, this one doesn't have a ranking, this one's 2,000, 40,000, 121,000, 300,000, 44, 30, 127, 340, 198, 433,000, 61. So I think you'd agree with me here that the majority of these books are under 200,000. In fact, most of them are under 100,000. So if this was something like a coloring book niche, what I'd be looking for, since those books are harder to create and they take more time and they take more money, what I'd be looking for are BSRs that are consistently under 50,000. Okay, so you don't have to stick to a certain criteria like this, because you're going to drive yourself absolutely mad if you do that. And when you're doing your research, you're going to come across books that just aren't selling well on the first page. So like 1 million here is one that's not selling well at all. But you want to take maybe just 4, 5 or 6 that are under 200,000, even under 100,000 is going to be great as well. Okay, so the other thing that I tend to not really take any notice of anymore is how many reviews the books have. Okay, so I tend to just go with a niche that I know has got traffic going to it, and if I can get onto the first page for that niche, then I'm going to make the assumption if I stick around that I will get reviews, and over time I'll be able to compete. So it's crazy because so many people have this very, very strict criteria when it comes to doing their niche research, but realistically it's going to be very hard to find those niches that fit an exact criteria. Okay, so at some point you're gonna have to bite the bullet and just be like, yeah, that's probably going to be good enough. Okay, so what I can see from this, the botanical composition notebook, keyword phrase that we're going for, I would say this is very good on the basis that, you know, there are quite a lot of books here that have a very low BSR. A lot of them are under 200,000, a lot of them are under 20,000 as well. So at this point, I like to go ahead and just sort of go back into my notes and just make a note as to how good you know, the overall sort of BSRs were on the front page for that search term. So this one, I'm going to go with very good, and then we're going to do that on every single search term. Okay, so for example, if it was flower composition notebook, we can go ahead, search for that, and then do the same thing again. Okay, you want to go through these, see how low the BSRs are for this search term as well. So this one's probably not quite as good, it's still decent, but the other one was actually better. So again, you can come down, go back into your notes, just write down something like just good or something like that. Okay, so just to give another example here, one more before we move on. If we search for a different niche like gamer composition notebook here, again, I'll take a look through the BSRs and see how consistently low they are across the first page. So this one, I'm seeing lots of like 600,000, a million, 900,000, 800,000, 3 million, 2 million, 1 million. We got a couple lowish ones, but this is a sponsored listing. So again, a million, 2,800,000, 2 million, 4 million, 2 million. So you tell me the difference between what we've just looked for with the botanical composition notebook and the gamer composition notebook. Which would you pick out of the two? It's obviously going to be the botanical one, right? Because the BSRs are consistently pretty low across the first page. Whereas with this one, we have lots of books that are performing badly and only a handful that have decent BSRs. Okay, again, let's do one more here. Axolotl composition notebook was one of the search terms we had for a different niche. Let's just go through the BSRs: 500,000, 200, 300, 400,000, 200,000, 400,000, 1.7 million, 600,000. Now this is slightly better than the last one that we looked at, but it's not as good as the first one. So at this point, you'd have to make the assumption if you made an axolotl composition notebook and got ranked for that search term, you have a good chance of making some sales. Okay, so you'd have to keep that in mind when producing a book like this, because you got to determine from those BSRs, you know, this is sales data basically on Amazon. It's telling you how well these type of books are selling. So looking at these BSRs, I'd say they're just selling okay. And this is why I recommend everyone spends as much time on Amazon as possible doing their research, because you'll be able to look at a page like this and you'll know within a minute whether it's worth your time or not. Okay, so let's just do one more for good measure here. So for example, let's say we came across a dinosaur niche. We've gone for a dinosaur composition notebook as the main search term here, or one of the search terms we could potentially use. Again, you want to go through, look at the BSRs and see how low they are across the first page. So looking at these ones, we got 300,000, 94, 20, 200, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so just looking at these, I'm already going to say that this niche is just okay. I would have said maybe on par with the last one that we looked at. So I think when it comes to producing notebooks, you do have to be a little bit lenient in terms of these BSRs, because, you know, you're not going to just get books that just take off extremely well. Well, you might do, but you'd have to look at a niche like this and say, well, maybe I'm going to make, like, if I produce one of these books, I might make like 10 sales a month. In the dinosaur composition notebook niche, I might make 30 per month. In the botanical composition notebook niche. Okay, you got to be realistic, because these are so easy to create and lots of people are creating them. Okay, so let's move on now to a massive part of your niche research, which hardly anyone talks about. And it is so important that you understand this before going forward with any project. Okay, so with any niche, no matter what it is, you need to take into consideration what your chances are of getting found. So the thing here is everyone is different when it comes to publishing. Like my budget, Chris's budget is $400 a month on ad campaigns across all of my books. Okay, whereas the next person, their budget might be nothing. Okay, so you have to take that into consideration when it comes to producing your books, instead of just relying on luck. Okay, so what we need to do is to determine what it's going to take to get ranked onto the first page for whatever search term we're going for. Okay, so we wrote down all those search terms. Let's assume that the one that we're going for is going to be, we want to try and get ranked on the first page for botanical composition notebook. Let me just refresh this quickly. So what we want to do from here, and this is what I do for every single book that I produce, is determine how much direct competition there is. So the reason why I ignore this search results number is because I don't think it truly represents how much competition you have. In fact, I know it doesn't. So what you want to do with every niche that you publish within is to see how fast the direct competition, so books that are directly related to yours, how fast they start dying off. Okay, so by that I mean, like, at what point they start not becoming botanical composition books as you scroll through Amazon. You'll see what I mean as I do the demonstration here. So obviously the first page we have, is packed full of botanical books, right? Minus the sponsored listings. These are pretty much all botanical coloring, what are we doing? Botanical composition notebooks. Okay, so you want to keep going onto the second page. Again, these all look pretty, again, a little bit different here, but these all look pretty botanical as I'm going through them. Okay, so let's just scroll through, assume that most of these are botanical or botanical themed to some extent. Okay, so this is your direct competition. This is what you need to take into consideration when it comes to producing your books. Okay, because if there's this much direct competition, which there looks like there's going to be a few pages of direct competition here, you're going to have to ask yourself, what do I now need to do in order to compete in the botanical composition notebook niche? Okay, so this is mega important. So to be direct here with you, if I was just from what I've just looked at, we saw that the botanical composition notebooks, they had a consistently low BSR on the front page, but also they stay relevant for quite a few pages. Okay, so one assumes the direct competition for botanical composition notebooks is pretty large. So when it comes to there being large amounts of competition, where are you going to expect your book to end up on Amazon? Okay, so the best way that you're going to get found in a niche like this is by spending money on your ad campaigns. Okay, and this has to be a reality for you. If you're only producing a handful of books, if you're just doing 1 or 2 botanical composition notebooks, the chances of you just getting found and Amazon magically favoring you and putting you on the front page and letting you stay there, it is going to be quite low. Okay, so you're going to have to look at pushing ad campaigns to your book when you launch it, and then keeping those ad campaigns running to keep the book ranked high until you have enough sales to maybe turn the ad campaigns off. Okay, so I would say botanical composition notebook, pretty competitive niche. Okay, in fact, it is pretty similar to the one that I actually produced my notebooks in. So that is your first option when it comes to actually being found on Amazon. So we've determined that there's a fair bit of traffic going to that niche. So in order for us to compete, we would probably have to look at running ad campaigns to get found on the first page for our search term. So if you're someone going into this that doesn't have any money whatsoever to invest, then you're going to have to accept that maybe it's going to be slightly harder for you to get into these niches. And what you're going to have to do is to niche down even further. Okay, so for me, someone that has a decent ad campaign budget, I go for these kind of broad niches in everything I do. Botanical composition notebook, pretty broad niche, I would say. Not super broad. It's not just notebook, but it's still competitive, as we saw. Coloring books are exactly the same. So things like butterfly coloring books, that would be what my niche would be. That would be my keyword, my title. That's what I go for to try and get on the front page. And my budget matches that. Okay, but if your budget doesn't match that, then you need to look at niching down. Okay, so you need to niche down to the point where there's less competition so that you get found easier. But you need to take into consideration here and keep in mind that when you keep niching down to a smaller audience, you're going to be getting less sales. Okay, so your chance of being found goes up, but of course the audience is more specific, so the amount of sales that you're going to make is going to go down with that as well. Okay, so when it comes to niching down here, you need to find niches that allow you to niche down and be more specific. Okay, so I'm just using dinosaur composition notebook as an example here. So whilst I might be searching, if I was to publish a book in the dinosaur composition notebook niche, I would probably just target that. But if you're someone that has a smaller budget, then you could possibly look at doing things like niching down to dinosaur composition notebook for boys or dinosaur composition notebook for kids grade K2 or something like that. So when you do that, you're going to be reducing the amount of competition and how hard it is for you to get ranked onto that first page. Okay, so if you were using, this is why you don't take a look, this is why you ignore the search results. Okay, are you telling me that there's more search results for dinosaur composition notebook for kids grade 2, kids grade K2 than there are for dinosaur composition notebook, which has 1,000? It doesn't make sense, right? So it's obviously picking up on these other search terms and including books in that. But if you made a book that was titled Dinosaur Composition Notebooks for Kids Grade K2, and that was the title for your book, I reckon you have a decent chance of getting ranked on this first page for that search term. Okay, so it's a much more specific search term, but you have a better chance of getting found. And again, are you telling me there's 10,000 of these books on there? I don't think so. And of course, if you are niching down like that, then you would need to take a look at the BSRs on the front page of similar books if they exist, and see how well they're doing to see if it's worth your time still. And if you're doing things this way where you are niching down, then perhaps you can be a bit more lenient when it comes to the BSRs that you're looking for. So instead of under 200,000, maybe you could look under 500,000. Okay, also it is to be noted that if you are niching down like this, whilst sales might start off quite slow, so typically when I go into a competitive niche, there's going to be more traffic going to those books, so sales can come in quite quickly. Whereas if you're niching down, then you'd expect the sales to be a little bit slower. Okay, so what I have found from previous projects is that when I've niched down, even though the sales coming a little bit slower, over time, if your book is good enough, you actually start getting ranked for other variations of your search term, your book title and your subtitle as well. So whilst you might rank on the first page for Dinosaur Composition Notebook for Kids, blah, 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 over time, if you make enough sales, you might start ranking for just Dinosaur Composition Notebook and variations of that search term as well. Okay, so that's something I'm not going to say that's guaranteed to happen, but I have noticed that in the past, and I notice it with my other books as well, that eventually you do start getting ranked for other, for variations of your keywords in the future. Okay, so hopefully this is all making sense. So you need to determine what you need to do in order to get found. No matter what niche you're going after, you always need to take that into consideration, what your budget is. If you're a person that doesn't have much money, then you will need to look at niching down and probably producing more books. If you're someone that does have a sizable budget, then you can look at going into those more competitive niches, because you're going to have that ad spend, the ability to spend on ads to get ranked onto the first pages. Okay, so let's just use one of my books as an example here. Now you have to bear in mind here that it would be silly for me to show off the exact notebooks that I produced. I probably will at some point soon, but with these books, like, anyone can make the notebooks, whereas with the other books that actually are harder to make and take time and money to create books in, I don't mind showing them off, because it would take a lot more for someone to compete with me. But just showing off my notebooks would be crazy at this point, probably. But like I say, I am stupid enough to do it at some point, just for the sake of transparency. But let's just use one of my other books for example here. So I was interested in I was doing this whole math workbook scene thing. I was looking at producing those type of books using different software to create them. So the same applied here. I was searching through Amazon, just went with the broad niche, which was the math workbook. So we have that starting point, remember. I was looking through, and eventually what I stumbled upon was another competitive niche within that, which was the addition and subtraction workbook niche. So the same applied here. I just went with what the most logical search term was, which was addition and subtraction workbook. And then I went through, so again, search results 2000, I don't know, I don't think there is. But what I did was go through the first page here to see how low the BSRs were on these books. Now these are going to be lower than the notebooks, because obviously these are harder to create. So I went through the first couple pages, the first page, saw that the math workbook, the addition and subtraction workbooks were pretty low with all their BSRs consistently. And then what I did was take a look at how stiff the competition was by going on to the next few pages and seeing how fast the direct competition dies off. So there was a little bit of competition on the next few pages as well. So I knew that I had to run some ad campaigns in order to get ranked for that. Okay, so I predicted before uploading this book it would take me around 2 or 3 sales to get onto the first page. This is my book here, it's this one. So I ended up on the first page after a couple sales from the ad campaigns. Now what I noticed was the book did start slightly dropping down. So what I did was I kept ad campaigns running the whole time, that were kind of break even-ish on some of them, which kept the book ranked really high here. So now the organic sales on this book are really good, and that's exactly Exactly, pretty much what I did with the notebooks as well. So again, it all comes down to, there's no secret to any of this. Like, there's no secret method. I would say there's no magical tool that's going to help you, but you need to use your brain. You need to get onto Amazon and look. You need to really understand what people are looking for in your niche. You need to really understand whether people are actively buying books in that niche, and then you really need to understand how to position yourself inside that niche, and then you need to understand what you need to do to actually get seen in that niche. Okay, so when you put all those factors together and you have an amazing book on top of that as well, you're going to get onto that first page, and then you're going to start seeing sales. I absolutely promise you that will be the case, but it takes time to understand, you know, these certain factors that go into it. Okay, so approaching the end of the video now, I actually have this bonus section that I want to include, and this kind of ties in with the whole niching down thing and people that don't have much money to invest into into their books to get ranked on the first page for more competitive niches. So what we're going to be looking at here is seasonal niches. So what people do when it comes to seasonal niches is that they'll typically wait a month or a couple of weeks before producing books in those niches, and that's way too late. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this section of the video is take a look at the historic BSRs for seasonal niches, and when you do things this way, you're going to be able to enter into those niches much sooner. You're going to be able to get ahead of the competition, get your books out sooner, get them ranked sooner, so when people actually start buying for those seasonal niches, you're going to be the ones that are on the front page. So that's going to make sense in just a second, but the tool that I'm using is by Helium 10. I think it's free. It's an extension, and all it does is show the historic data for the BSRs of a book. Okay, so let's just do a couple examples now. And the reason why I think this is such a good idea is because people wait way too late before they enter into those niches. So for example, if it's a Valentine's Day notebook, people tend to wait till like right now at the start of February. They'll see the BSRs are looking really low on other people's books, and then they'll panic and they'll start getting books out there, and it'll be too late at that point. By the time you got ranked, you know, it's not going to be worth it. You need to be there like 2 to 3 months in advance. And you can do this with any niche, but let's just use the notebooks for example now. So let's say that Valentine's Day notebooks were something we were, you know, let's say this was a couple months ago and the BSRs were all terrible for Valentine's Day notebooks. What we could have done is come across then, searched for a book that's like, you know, competition that's, you know, maybe over a year old. So let's try and find this one here, which was February 2020. Okay, so let's just go into this one and see what was happening during Valentine's Day, like that sort of period, how well this book was selling. So when we do that, we can determine whether it's going to be worth us getting into this niche early as well. Okay, so what we can do is come down to the chart here and just see if the book actually starts selling during those periods. So for example, what we can see last year is that the book did start selling, you know, okay, went up and down, sort of hit a low of around 200,000. So the rest of the year, obviously, you know, we're looking at 4 million, nothing happens at all, getting toward 5 million pretty much here. And then come the first, you know, the January here, that's when the book actually starts seeing sales again. Okay, so come December, you want to be looking at uploading those type of books. Okay, so this niche is just okay. From the Valentine's Day notebook niche, it looks okay. So let's just use another example here for one that, you know, isn't anytime soon, which is Thanksgiving notebook. I've just randomly typed that in. Obviously it's a seasonal book. We are currently ranked for this book 3 million. So if you're doing your research now, you look at that and you go, well, that's not worth pursuing. But if you're using the BSR chart here, what you can do is see that it does dip during, I don't actually know when Thanksgiving is. I assume, is it November based on this? Looks like it probably is. I should know that. But yeah, it looks like they do dip during this period. So come like, you know, June, July, those sort of regions, that's when you can start looking at uploading those books, getting them ranked onto the first pages, and then starting to see the sales happen after that. Okay, so this, what's so good about this is that if you're someone that doesn't have much money to invest into those competitive niches, you can take a look at packing out your catalog with these seasonal niches across as many different seasonal niches as you can. So looking at things like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween. So you're trying to fill out as much of the year as you can so that you experience all of those different dips, okay? So again, here's another example. Now, if you are someone that has no budget at all, and you can't outsource anything, your book cover, and you're not very good at making elaborate book covers, then you could look into something like this when it comes to notebooks, having like just a quote on the front. Make sure the quote is unique and relevant to the niche that you're in. But Mother's Day notebook, for example, here. So again, we could come down and see that the BSR at the moment is 3 million, but during Mother's Day and during Christmas, these books, they are dipping in their BSRs, and they're starting to make some sales. Okay, so you want to pack out all of this as much of the year as you can with these different seasonal niches, and that's one way. I think that's one of the best ways that someone who doesn't have much money can actually start seeing sales. So again, just one more example here. If you can create something like this, I'm hesitant to say create this in Canva, but it is a possibility. If you have something, if you're doing like a Father's Day notebook, you have something funny and unique that you could put on, then again, let's go down, look, see what the rank is at the moment. 900,000, not particularly good, but during Father's Day, which is June, I think it is, the month prior to that, a couple months prior to that, you'll actually start seeing some sales come in, and then of course it's going to start dipping as we get toward Father's Day this year as well. Okay, so and let's just do one more quick example here. So just randomly gone for Chinese New Year notebook, and again we can check out the BSRs. I think it is January something. Is it the 20? I'm not sure when Chinese New Year is. I would have to check that. But it looks like the BSRs for this are extremely strong at the moment for a notebook, especially. So I assume it's pretty close. But what we would have seen last year, again, if this book was around long enough, it would have probably dipped during that period as well. Okay, so these are really easy to make. You can have these created yourself. You can do them yourself, or you can outsource simple covers for a few dollars. But yeah, that's just another way that you can start positioning your books onto Amazon's marketplace to help you stand out and actually start making sales if your budget is a little bit lower. So that's pretty much it. It all comes down to doing your niche research correctly. There's loads of different ways you can do it. That's the way that I do it, and that's the way that I've made those sales. Now, I am aware that some people will obviously want to see the sales figures for the sales that I've claimed in the title for this video. So if we come over to my account quickly, and I'll make sure that I'm on the paid section here. So basically what's happened, around 6 months ago, I would say, I changed my approach to publishing even more than I had done originally, also to the point that I'm showing off in this video. So the sales that you're seeing here are from the books I've selected, where I've changed to this approach where I'm targeting more competitive niches and just learning how to position myself in them and get ranked onto the first page. Okay, so I've selected the 9 books here that the last 9 that I uploaded, where I've used this research method, just so it's in line with what I've promised in the title for this video. Now, as you can see, it sold 4,091 copies from just 9 books. And the point of everything that I do and that I want to bring to people is that you don't have to have a ton of books to make sales. Okay, you don't need to keep slamming Amazon with books every single month. Okay, at the moment I'm producing around 1 book a month, if that. Okay, so these 4,000 sales are just from the books, the newer books, where I've recently changed my approach to publishing. Okay, so it doesn't include all my other books. And just to touch upon that, so this is the 9 books selected here. That's probably 9, 18, 27. That's probably a quarter of the amount of books that I have live. So I'm seeing lots of sales from higher content books that I never talk about on my channel. Okay, so a lot of my total income, which isn't shown in this here, is made up of higher content books, which tend to make me more money. So the reason why I don't ever talk about them is because that's not what my channel is about. It's also not something I can talk about, because what I produced a higher content book in, I wrote myself in 2018. It was very specific information, very specific knowledge that I've acquired over the years, that 99% of people won't know themselves. So there's no point in me talking about it. But after looking through other people's videos, so recently I think I was watching I think it's Sean Dalwet, some of his videos, and I know that he produces higher content books, and I think outsources the work to people. So what I'm going to look at doing this year, and of course I'm going to be showing this off on my channel as well, is to look at producing some higher content books, maybe 1 or 2 higher content books, because with the higher content books you can make more money, you can charge higher prices. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can of course put out ebook versions of those books as well. So now that I have some more money to invest, because with the higher content books, you can't just hire someone for $10 from Upwork to do it. They're going to come back with a ton of rubbish. You're probably going to be looking around like maybe $1,000, $2,000 of investment, I think, to get some specialist information to create a higher content book, maybe even more. I'm not actually quite sure. So that's something, now that I have a little bit more money, I'll be looking at investing into, and when I do so, I'll be uploading videos about that throughout the course of this year, which is going to be really exciting for those of us that want to get into higher content books as well, because my experience with higher content books is they're pretty good. Like, I think the higher content book that I have out, I think it makes around $7, $8, $9 of profit. I think maybe it's $8 actually of profit per sale. So that's really quite good. And of course you can have like an audio version of your book as well, which I do. It doesn't make me much money because of the niche it's in, but it still makes money through different avenues as well. So on top of that, I'm going to be looking toward uploading some books onto Ingram Spark as well, and talking about that in the future of this channel as well. So all exciting stuff, but that's it for this video. Oh, in fact, some people probably want to see the sales just for the notebooks, which this video is kind of about. Okay, so this is the 6 notebooks selected here, so 4 so far today. Now in the last 90 days we have 459. I need to go to bed or something. 459, and in its lifetime those 6 notebooks have made, hurry up and load, 846 sales. Okay, so again, if I'm ever showing you anything like this, it's not to brag. Trust me, there's no bragging in this whatsoever. It is to show you the reality that you can produce a handful of books if you position them correctly on Amazon. Think about where they're going to end up. You can make really good sales from a low amount of books, okay, even if those books are notebooks. Okay, so that is it for this video. If you've enjoyed this, please do leave a comment, like, subscribe, do all those things. It helps me out massively. It took me ages to make this video, so please do that. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'll see you next Wednesday.